Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rescue Michigan Show special stream tonight. We hinted on Sunday we were going to try to get Representative Shane Hernandez on before the state convention, and he is coming. He will be on at around 9 o'clock tonight. We want to start the show early. We know people like to, take their time filling in, so we're going to just chat for a few minutes till Shane comes on. Should I call him Shane, do you think, Amber?
I don't know. See, that ruined it because I was like, I thought you meant Trejo. And so that's what I've been saying lately. I've been saying Trejo.
There's that for sure, yeah. Well, I've heard the saying, once a senator, always a senator. But I don't know if it applies to state reps. So maybe it doesn't. Maybe he's just Shane for now. Mr. Hernandez, I mean, he's younger than me. I can't call him Mr. Hernandez. So
yeah, I was so surprised. I'd never met him before. And then he was at the Dream Cruise event that I had. And he was just like this unassuming guy. And then finally, all the people were coming over. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're Shane. What? It was awesome. He's a really nice guy. So
he makes a great first impression too. I can't wait to introduce him to you guys. You have different experiences meeting with politicians because sometimes they really are, they have a certain gravitas, and then there's others like my former boss John Riley, who just comes across as just an average Joe, and you're like, wow, you're a state rep. He's like, yeah. So right. Stephen Ghostly says, welcome back, Amber. By the way, folks, we are live in all three places, Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble, so feel free to interact in the chat. We will try to certainly read everyone's chat, try to read them all on air, but we had a huge stream last Sunday, and there was no way I could keep up with everything. I mean, we had hundreds of comments on Facebook alone, let alone YouTube and Rumble. So I don't know. I've heard some shows when they get to this point of chat volume have to have a policy where they only read super chats and things like that. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. We'll see if we can keep up. So we'll just kind of play it by ear. So, but speaking of last Sunday's show, I think we're all breathing a sigh of relief right now. When we did that show on Sunday, there was a lot of indication of a real effort afoot to try to really screw up the convention that's coming up this weekend. There was talk that Garrett Soldano might run for lieutenant governor. There was clear indications John Yob was interested in supporting him. That's all changed. Soldano's chosen not to run for lieutenant governor. President Trump has endorsed Shane Hernandez for LG. Matt DePerno has endorsed Tudor Dixon and Shane Hernandez. Christina Caramo's endorsed Tudor Dixon and Shane Hernandez. Yob is indicating on his Twitter feed that he's supporting Shane Hernandez. So I've still seen some people in various text groups and things like that are talking about trying to nominate Ralph Reband. I don't think this is likely to go anywhere, though, folks. But we'll talk about all this stuff on the stream. There's a lot of there's still a few potentially controversial things that might happen this weekend. Jane Locke says, please refrain from the Nostra D'Angeli thing. Yeah, I've learned my lesson, Jane. That beard is a real mess. That reason alone. And also the hat doesn't go well with the headphones, although I could get earbuds or something.
That's funny.
So, we'll try not to do that. Although there may be more predictions to come. There may be.
You would think that would have been discredited, but the election cycle is, as goes by as fast as the media cycle goes, and people forget.
Yeah, and Amber, by the way, you have to remember you have to announce when you're reading a chat because we're streaming in three places, so people on Rumble don't see our YouTube and Facebook chats, and the same for all the others. So, yeah, Tim Kuhn in the chat said, hasn't Yob been discredited by his destruction of the Craig and Johnson campaigns? It doesn't really work that way, folks. Unfortunately for consultants, they just kind of move on to the next thing. That's how that goes. So, and voters have a short memory,
Exactly.
So, we heard, and I've talked about this on Sunday stream, there's a lot of guilt by association stuff going around, about Shane and, he worked for Jason Wentworth. It's like, well, John Yob worked for Rick Snyder. So, and he was campaign consultant for James Craig and Perry Johnson. But you know what? I mean, when you work in politics, that's just the way it goes. You have to judge people on their own acts and their own deeds. And just because someone works for someone is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, I would argue we want to have more patriots working in all aspects of government, no matter who their boss is.
That's exactly what I told somebody. I said, you have to right the ship somehow.
Yeah. This is true. So anyway, just to address a couple of things, because the convention, it's hard to believe, like 24 hours from now will probably be, the official convention starts Saturday morning, but there's events happening in Lansing Friday night. We're going to probably have to go up there on Friday.
I know.
So 24 hours from now, the convention's like happening.
I know.
But
I wanted to be like the same day, go up, but it's kind of like now that you're so knee deep in politics, you're almost expected to be there, and it'll be fun. It'll be a good time.
Yeah, some conventions, they actually have district caucuses on Friday evening. They will at the next state convention, I think in January, I think it is. So
what's in January? Oh, leadership. Yeah.
State chair, district chairs, or district committees, I think. I don't know if they elect district chairs directly or if the district executive committees do that. But anyway, yeah, it's coming right up.
That's how I got involved, was getting on district committee. That's to think that was 2 years ago. Yeah, I just got an email. I thought it was an email from a Sean Maddock. Turned out to be Shane Trejo. Yeah. If I could go back 2 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, if only we had those times back. I don't know. But anyway.
I wouldn't be here right now with all of you fine people. I would be court reporter living a mom life.
Well, we're glad you're with us. Not necessarily the best decision for anybody to make to get involved in politics, but we need good people in the fight. So we're glad you're here. Anywho, a couple other things people have been talking about. One is there's always been this kind of ongoing concern that there's going to be some sort of secret establishment push to overthrow either Christina Caramo or Matt DePerno or both for their nominations for Attorney General and Secretary of State. I can tell you, folks, that's not happening. That is just not going to happen. There was never actually a plan in the first place. And I think even the establishment understood, no matter how much they might have disliked Matt or Christina, that doing so would damage the entire ticket. And they don't want that. And frankly, for that same reason, that's a part of why I don't want to see people trying to kneecap Tudor Dixon, by challenging her nominee for lieutenant governor. Although I think when we have Shane on, you'll see there's also, it's just the simple fact that Shane is the real deal to begin with, and not someone that should be opposed in the first place for any reason.
Hi, Vance.
And I see a lot of positive comments in the chats here. Jeb Stewart says Hernandez is a great pick, no two ways about it. Let's see. Heather Dow says, saw Tudor Dixon speak tonight at the Kent County GOP. She was excellent, answered everyone's questions with very thorough and thoughtful answers. Stephen Ghostly says, JT Taylor on Facebook says, tsunami coming. Folks, this is one of the things I want to talk about for a minute, because as much as we might all want to rest on our laurels on this, it is not that certain. In fact, let me try to pull up this story. I saw it last night, and I'm pretty sure I can find it again pretty quickly here about what some of the results have shown. Yeah, I have found it. Let me pull it up here. Where's the tweet? Here it is. All right, hold on. Let me share my screen. It is important for people that are taken for granted that we can engage in whatever shenanigans we want to damage the ticket, and it's all gonna be fine because we're gonna win no matter what anyway. Here's the results of special elections since Roe v. Wade was overturned. So June 7th, California's 22nd district, Trump won by 5 points in 2022 in that seat. Oh, geez, I clicked on it. Now it's popping this up. Oh, here we go. 19-point increase for Republicans. June 14th, a seat Biden won by +4, the Republican won by +5. Then the Dobbs decision happened. Nebraska, first district, Trump won by 11 points, Republican won by 5. August 9th, Trump won the district by 10, Republican won by +4. August 23rd, a district, Biden won by 2 points, and again, held it, Democrat won by 2 points. And in New York's 23rd, a seat that Trump won by 11 points, the Republican won by just 7 points. So these are not good numbers. And it's showing that the Democrat strategy is working. Now, you can say the Republican strategy is just not fully kicked in yet because we're still, Saturday's the convention. That's when the great unification happens, supposedly. And that's when all the candidates fully transition into the general election cycle. But it's going to come down to messaging and strategy and how well they pivot and how well we message effectively on issues. So what I think it really comes down to is, first of all, keeping the focus on Gretchen Whitmer, because we know what the Democrats are going to talk about. Right. You're on mute, by the way. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
It's going to be all about abortion. It's going to be all about Republicans are so extreme. The Republicans need to keep the focus on the things Gretchen Whitmer did that she's trying to make everybody forget about.
Yeah.
And not letting the voters only hear one side. And this is a tough thing for politicians even to understand. It's a tough thing for the grassroots to understand, is that you have to not let the other side control the terms of the debate.
Right.
And if you're talking about abortion, Gretchen Whitmer's going to say Tudor Dixon and Shane Hernandez are radically pro-life. And there's a few different ways you can answer that. One would be to point out there's a ballot proposal that's radically pro-abortion. And that's not necessarily a bad strategy. It's worth noting that that's what's on the table. Because a minority of voters are 100% pro-life. A minority. But a minority of voters are also not 100% are 100% pro-abortion. Most people think it's somewhere in the middle. But if your message is, yeah, I'm happy that Tudor is so pro-life and Shane is so pro-life, you're missing the point. The point is they have on the ballot not just late-term abortion, not just dismemberment abortion, but also the sexual mutilation of children. And I would argue that's the best angle. That's the best angle on that entire proposal. That's something the Democrats have to be held accountable for. Because I'll tell you, folks, my entire family is Democrat. And they are not pro-life at all. None of them are. But I'll tell you what, I have a transgender cousin. And the ladies in my family are not happy about what has become of her, now he, as a minor, getting puberty blockers and things like that. That's an issue that reaches across the aisle. That's a winner. Right,
because it doesn't have the parents' consent. It doesn't have to have the parents' consent, correct?
Yeah. Oh, unfortunately, in our case, he does have the parents' consent, but
yeah. See, I would never give in to that. So kudos to you for doing that.
Yeah, and the other fundamental issue is though, but yeah, there are people in schools that are really pushing these things on kids, and kids are not to be making these life-altering decisions. There's a reason we don't let kids get tattoos. So, anyway. We'll talk more about this maybe afterwards. I do want to get back to talking about the convention, talking about what comes after the convention. But
work comes after the convention. Lots and lots of
a lot of hard work comes after the convention. But we have a very special guest in the studio tonight, and I want to bring him on. So, folks, please welcome. And of course, in the chats, you guys can direct your questions. Shane Hernandez, we were having a discussion earlier about whether or not I should address you as representative, because I don't know the etiquette. I've heard this saying, once a senator, always a senater. I don't know if that applies to state reps.
That's not me. That's not how I roll.
Fair enough. Well, hey, thank you, Shane, for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time. I know a lot of people have questions, but I want to just at least start from the beginning. It was funny. We sent out an email blast today just announcing our show, and I got a message from Gary Glenn, a former state rep, and he kind of mentioned in passing, you forgot to mention that Shane was the chairman of the Blue Water Tea Party 10 years ago. And I thought maybe we should go back a little bit and, first of all, just take a moment to introduce yourself and let everyone know. First of all, how you got involved, kind of your path to being a state rep, and how in the world you find yourself now being the presumptive nominee for lieutenant governor today.
Right. Well, I'll go way back in my story and tell you that, I grew up in a household, in a Democrat household. And my dad believed we were Democrats, and so did I, because we were Hispanic, low income, and he was a union worker. We didn't know anything else about it. It's just we fit in those silos that the Democrats create, and we believed them. And I believed that Democrats were for the poor, and that was that. So that was where we were. And as I started to get into my high school years, I realized that every value my Democrat dad has taught me is a conservative value. I started to make that connection. And my brother is 5 years older than me. He had decided he was a Republican, and I saw how much it drove my dad nuts. So I thought it was kind of fun at the time, and I went with it. And then off to college I go, and I studied architecture at Lawrence Technological University. And I studied sustainable and green design at the height of the Al Gore movement. So not only am I in a university setting, I'm studying green design while Al Gore is the guy, and I'm telling these professors I'm Republican. So I had to learn to actually back it up real quick. And I had to do my research, and I had to dig, and I had to actually learn how to debate these professors because they were aggressive about it. Of course, we all know what's going on in universities, and it was going on back then too. Fast forward to getting out of college, and I got my master's degree in 2009 in architecture. I started in practice at an architectural firm, and it was probably after the 2012 election. You know, we had been given John McCain and Mitt Romney as our nominees in 2 elections in a row, and I realized, like, I'm just this frustrated guy who doesn't know how to channel that and focus that. And so I reached out to an old friend of mine who I knew was involved, and his name was Tim Keller. He was the chair of Blue Water Tea Party at the time. And he said, come get involved. I'm going to sign you up as a delegate. We're going to get you started here. And I did that. And that was it. I mean, I got rolling, and I think I became chair of St. Clair County Republican Party after attending one meeting. Apparently, you know, a 29-year-old Hispanic guy walks into a meeting, and they all think, oh, wow, this is great. Let's put him as chair. And yeah, so I did that, but you know, and learned quickly that being a county chair is a pretty thankless job. And did that for 2 years, and realized that, you know, that there's a lot we could do through that, but I wanted to do true activism. And Tim didn't want to do Tea Party anymore, so I actually took over Blue Water Tea Party from him and chaired that for 1.5 years. And we laid out this plan. It was a comprehensive plan of how we were going to get local candidates from school boards and library boards and all those things that are affecting our lives that we've ignored. And we were going to recruit candidates for state rep. And we successfully recruited quite a few candidates. And the one place we couldn't recruit a candidate was in the 83rd district, which is where I lived. And I remember sitting down with the 2 guys that were helping me, and they're the ones who said to me, Shane, you can't find a candidate because it's you. And I thought, well, I had to go home and talk to my wife about that and pray about that. I was still kind of in a position in my life that I was just this kid from a low income family in a small town. And that was a crazy thought, if you ask me. But I prayed about it and decided to do it. And I ran my own campaign. I did my own social media. I designed my own mailers. I made my own walk lists. I figured out how to use Excel and targeted all my own lists and voters. And we won a 3-way race running against the current state rep's son. We won it by 16%. Oh, wow. So, you know, I learned there that you take a bold message forward. I had people, you can't say that on your flyer. And I'm like, that's what I believe. I can say that on my flyer, and I'm going to. We presented a bold message to the district.
Like what?
I mean, we talked about Common Core. We talked about corporate welfare. And people were saying, you can't put those things on your flyer. Yeah, well, I'm going to. And if I lose, I lose. And people appreciated it. They wanted specifics. They don't want to just hear that, oh, you're for education. No, that's just a generic talking point. We talked about wanting to do away with Common Core. We talked about never being willing to vote for corporate welfare. And I would tell somebody, if you go back and dig up one of those flyers, I don't think there's a single thing I put on there that I didn't do in my time in the legislature.
That's amazing.
So I spent 4 years in the legislature, ran for Congress, and lost. I'd say it's the best loss of my life. It helped me refocus. It's given me a lot of grit that I didn't have before. I ran that race to not lose, and it's not the way to do something. And I learned a lot from that. And that if we run against Gretchen Whitmer like that, we're not going to beat her. We have to take it to her. We have to remind families what she did to them over the last 2 years. Destroyed businesses, pulled their kids out of schools, and they're still not back. They're behind in their education still. We had people sitting outside watching loved ones die through a window. I mean, I saw pictures of people at nursing homes watching through a window. We have to bring that to the front and tell those stories. We have to go on the offensive, and we have to talk about where we are today, which is you can't afford your groceries if they're even on the shelves. You can't afford your gas. Your your mortgage is going up, your insurance is going up. You can't find employees if you're a business owner, and if you can, you can't afford them. There's a lot of things that we have to go on the offensive in this campaign, and losing that campaign, I think prepared me for this, and it really gave me the grit and energy to do this.
Yeah, running a congressional campaign is no fun. I remember at one point when I was working in Lansing, I ran into Pete Lucido, who I think was a senator at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And, and he has a reputation for being like a hard charging, Trump type who's like always doing a million things at once. And he's like, what's it like working in Congress? And I was like, oh, it's terrible. I mean, you're on one hand, you're in the arena, but you can't do anything because you've got, 434 other offices to deal with and the whole army. It's like, hurry up and wait. He's like, it doesn't sound. And so he ends up running for county prosecutor. He gets to run the whole show. Congress is no fun. It's always better to be in the executive branch. But going back though, because you mentioned all the stuff that you put on your flyers, and you also mentioned Common Core, and that reminded me because there's a lot of people that are, I don't necessarily think they have a malicious intent in it, but people who just have an inclination just to second guess and doubt. And of course, a big part of that was the fact that the DeVos's endorsed Tudor Dixon kind of rubbed off on her, and that therefore she's controlled and blah blah blah. And I got this great letter the other day from my former boss, John Riley, who you and he competed with for being the most conservative in the House, and he ran down a lot of issues where you guys were really taking on leadership, and one of them I'd completely forgotten about. But there was this big push a few years ago from the DeVos families to implement this grading scheme on public schools where every school would be graded from A to F. And I remember, as I told it to John at the time, I was saying, it's like the Scarlet Letter. They want to put this, they want to spray paint F on a school building. And like, I get the inclination, but it's driving things the wrong way towards more standardization, less local control. And you really stood up to them on this, like more than most did. And John really recounted what kind of a fight that was, because you were a committee chair at the time, I believe. I think this was during the first term, right? You were transportation.
It was lame.
What happened there?
It was lame duck of our first term. I think my name had been released as the next appropriations chair.
Okay.
But I actually, hadn't been given that position officially yet. So you can imagine the conversations in the back room and what they were related to as I was getting pulled back there. But, I'm not somebody who blows up relationships. You know what I mean? Like the DeVos's are good on other issues that I care about in charter schools and online learning and things like that. But I'm not afraid to stand up and tell you when I disagree with you too. And that's what I did that night. I philosophically didn't agree with it. And I had my arm twisted over and over and over. And if you were to go back and watch the House TV from that night, we probably went till 3 a.m. And I don't know how many times I got hauled in the back room. And
I don't think our audience appreciates how serious that pressure can be when they're like, we're going to block your bills because you vote no on ours and stuff like that. It is hard.
But I philosophically disagreed with the bill. And that didn't mean that I was going to go blow them up and do anything like that. But I stood up to it, and it's that simple. So, yeah.
The other thing I remember,
that's amazing.
The other thing I remember noticing too, because when we had your former staffers on, Shane and Randy and Jeff on Sunday, we randomly pulled up a scorecard that had you listed as most conservative. Merce News, I think in 2017, named you the most conservative. And then some other ones in subsequent years, it wasn't quite that high. But one of the things I remember, because also in Riley's office, we're like, well, we're the most conservative office. But part of it is too, though. I mean, people have different perspectives and things like A to F. When you would oppose it, even though your reasoning was completely different from the Democrats, that wouldn't be counted as a conservative vote. They would count that as a liberal vote. So
I would argue that a couple of those years where I got graded down, they were votes like that. They were graded as liberal votes. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. We should at least read some people's questions. So let me see here. Let me go to Rumble first, because I always feel like I'm neglecting Rumble. Let's see here. If you guys have a question, I see some comments. Okay. Dennis Marburger says, what are some thoughts on strategy regarding Dobbs, talking about Whitmer? I kind of talked about this before you came on, but tell us a little bit more about, kind of how you see taking on the Democrats and their message and their strategy, and what you guys see as
Back on the abortion proposal is what you're asking about.
Well, the proposals, but just how the campaign's going to go and what the Democrats are going to say and how you guys plan to address those.
Well, obviously, I mean, they're gonna talk about that proposal over and over again because it's probably the only thing that they have that polls halfway decent. They can't talk about the kitchen table issues that people care about right now because they didn't do anything about them. In fact, they created them. They caused those issues, and you see her out there saying things like, "Well, I've done all of this without increasing taxes." Well, I'm the reason she didn't increase taxes. She tried. She tried to increase your gas tax 45 cents. Every time you drive by that sign and see what the gas price is, add 45 cents to it. That's what she wants you to be paying. It reached what, 520, 525 in Michigan? Add 45 cents to that and think about it. So, we're going to continue to bring people back to those issues. We're not going to shy away from our position of where we are on life. That's who we are, and that's my background, and that's who I am. But at the same time, I'm going to turn that around and say, you're asking me about my position. Have you asked them about their position on a 13-year-old going without consent to any medical professional? Doesn't define what medical professional you have to go to. It could be 40 weeks along in the pregnancy. The general public doesn't agree with that either.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was talking about before you came on, is people don't realize how radical this proposal is. Right. Number one, on how extreme the abortion allowances are, but the other thing I think that, and I'm concerned that pro-life groups might fail to emphasize this, is that bit about any individual, including a child, having the right to sterilization and things like this. That they're opening the door to all kinds of radical sexual abuses of children who are not in a position to make that decision. And I think there's a lot of even liberal parents, even pro-choice people that wouldn't go along with that.
So my point is, I mean, if all we do is hide from it and we don't turn it around and go on the offensive, we're never going to win that argument. And that's what we need to do. We need to turn it around and say, listen, I mean, people don't agree with what's in that proposal. Not only that, but you entirely take it out of the legislature's hands. The legislature has no say in this going forward because you make it a constitutional amendment, an amendment that, at one point has 14 words without a space in it that run into each other and how it be written in our Constitution.
They're trying to hardwire this into the Constitution so it can't be undone, no matter how much buyer's remorse there might be after the fact. We've had a few comments in different places asking about election-related things, asking about illegal aliens getting state IDs, being allowed to vote, people asking about what you think about 2020. We are on YouTube, so you may not deny the results of the 2020 election because we'll get us kicked off of that channel.
Use phrases, keyword,
and I have mentioned your letter, and I know because at the time the 2020 election happened, that was right as you had your congressional election, so you only had a few weeks in office left. But go ahead and tell us your thoughts about election integrity, because that's been a big issue of ours too.
Yeah, I mean, we can start with the letter. I think that was the first letter that came out of the legislature toward the speaker saying we should have a full audit of this thing. I don't even know if we used the word audit then. It was so early on, like the terminology hadn't even really taken hold, but it went through a whole list of things that we should have looked through, and it was pretty comprehensive. And I believe I might have been the only member of the leadership team that signed that. And again, Adam, you've been on staff there. You understand kind of the weight of the pressure that comes against, we can't have a member of leadership sign this thing. And it's well, you know what? This is what I believe. And if you believe it was the most secure election in history, you shouldn't be concerned about this either. But, we can go down a whole list of things that were done right in front of our face that were absentee ballot applications sent out without solicitation, which no matter what a court says, I still don't believe is legal. We had drop boxes with no chain of custody whatsoever. Do we know who picks those up, what time they picked them up, where they went, how many they took out of there? What is the documentation of that kind of thing? The Zuckerberg dollars. And I'm going through the things that there's cold, hard facts too, right? Like we can really get a consensus around this, I would think. Of these Zuckerberg dollars came in. They came into urban areas, and I would question the Constitution gives everybody equal right and equal access to a ballot. Well, why were all the Zuckerberg dollars in urban areas and not rural areas? Are we violating the Constitution when we're supposed to be giving everybody equal access, but we're only spending those dollars in one area? But outside of that, I don't think that private dollars should come in to an election at all. you
And
know,
I think the other thing the media tries to do too is make it out like it has to be an absolute certain answer one way or the other. The legal standard is supposed to be if the number of ballots that are in doubt exceeds the margin, then there's a problem. Well, a judge ruled that the majority of all ballots in Michigan, absentee ballots, weren't lawfully validated because they didn't properly match their signatures. So
yeah, I didn't even talk
no
about
right or wrong
signature
answer.
verification, but there's no teeth to our current signature verification law. And
Right.
in the legislature, in the term after I left, tried to pass a bill that gave teeth to that law, and it got vetoed, I believe.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know your time is short. I'll see if I can get one more question
I really liked Patty
from
Peas.
chat. You like Patty Peas? What was Patty Peas?
Okay, it was a good one.
All right, go ahead, Amber.
Do you speak Spanish, and what is your plan for Latino outreach?
I do not speak Spanish. So my father is, and I'll answer, I think you asked kind of a question about border security and that. So let's wrap a few things into this, right?
Sure.
My father's third generation in this country. His grandparents came across the border from Mexico. I've actually been able to see the documentation that they signed, the legal documentation as they crossed the border and came here. My father didn't speak very good English when he went to school, and he felt that it really held him back, and he struggled because of it. So his goal was to make sure that my brother and I had an ability to that the English was our language. Now today he bugs me about, hey, your kids need to speak Spanish, and it's like, well, Dad, how am I supposed to do that? I don't speak Spanish. So we joke about that all the time. But I want to talk about real quick about the border wall comment, because that's come up a bunch of times, right? And I got asked earlier today, has your view on the border wall changed? No, my view on the border wall hasn't changed, because I've never been against the border wall. Here we are as conservatives, all of a sudden believing everything we read in the news, that they get everything accurate and that they write down everything accurate. I don't oppose a border wall. I live in a border town. I live a half a mile from Canada, and we have our own struggles here with that. But I also have friends that are border agents, and a lot of them. That's a big employer in this area. And right now they're being sent down to the southern border for 30 days at a time, taken away from their families, and they're not even allowed to do their jobs when they're sent down there. All they're really doing is kind of monitoring what's going on, and they can't even send people back, and they're not empowered to do anything. Border security is incredibly important. And if you want to find somebody who's angry about border security, find somebody like my father, whose family came here legally and jumped through the hoops and is now watching people walk across the border in getting whatever they want. And I said on a call earlier tonight, if I wasn't for the border wall, my own dad, who's a delegate on Saturday, wouldn't vote for me. So, I absolutely support it. And what's the plan for Latino outreach? I said earlier, I grew up believing that I fit in these silos, and we have to hit people with our core values, right? Because I truly believe Latinos and Hispanic voters are conservative at heart. They're all about hard work and family values and the American dream and the opportunity that is in this country. You look at what's going on in Texas right now. That most southernmost congressional district down there was 80% Hispanic, and it went Republican for the first time. Our values can reach them, but if you go to them and you just try to argue specific policies and specific ideas with them, a lot of times it's hard to reach. But if you start talking about the core values of conservatism, you can start to reach that community. And I was amazed when I ran for office how many of my relatives would whisper to me, hey, we're Republican too, but we just don't tell people because we're not supposed to be. But I think even just having a voice in a leadership position that says that, this is my story. This is where I came from. My father at 8 years old was picking tomatoes in Ohio and cotton in Texas and cucumbers in Michigan as a migrant worker. And his son, was the chair of the House Appropriations Committee. If you don't believe in the American dream, and you listen to the left that acts like it's all systemic and you can't do it and you can't break the system, I did. I have a personal story to tell people about how you can do that. Yeah.
Well, we've gone 20 minutes, Shane. I know your time is short.
If you got one more question, I can take one more.
Okay, one more. I was going to say, just let me know when to stop. I'll give you one more. Here's one from Cheryl D. Most people in Michigan haven't heard of you, but they have heard of Ralph Rebant. I'm not sure I agree with that premise, but the question is, why should precinct delegates vote for you over Ralph on Saturday?
I had somebody tell me the other day, and this was a fact from somebody else. I haven't looked this up, but I think it's probably fairly accurate, that I got 40 some thousand votes in the 10th congressional district in a congressional race, and he got 40 some thousand votes in a statewide race. So maybe a lot of what I've done is a few years ago, and there's a lot of new delegates. I can tell you I've spent this entire week on the phone calling delegates. That is all I have been doing, is calling delegates. And
He called me today.
Yes, I did. You were on the list. And I'm working down that list. I will work tirelessly. You go talk to some of the older Tea Party delegates that have been around, and you will find that they know me. They trust me. They know my record. Adam, you've been around. You know my record. Yeah. I think that there's probably a lot more delegates that know me than you think out there. And I've been a delegate for 12 years. I don't know how long Ralph's been a delegate, but I've been a delegate for 12 years. I've been at every convention. I have been on the state committee. I've been on the district committee. I've been on the county chair. I've been through those ranks, and I know a lot of people across the state of Michigan.
Yeah, that's impressive, man. It's hard to be on any of these committees, I'll tell you. A few people have asked me recently, should I be would I be my county chair next year? I'm like, oh, sounds like a great idea. Yeah, I'd love to have a ton of extra work, make no money, and be hated by everybody. Yeah, that sounds awesome.
We're still getting there, Adam. We're still getting there with you.
Yeah, we'll see.
Well, I won't call it a thankless job if I'm trying to convince you to do it. It's a great job.
Thank you, Shane.
All right. Well, Representative, thank you for joining us tonight. We really appreciate your time. And
I look forward to seeing you on Friday and Saturday.
I look forward to seeing you doing some great things in the legislature next year too. So
have a good
evening.
Thanks
for joining us, Shane. Yep. All right. Have a good one. All right. Well, there you go, folks. That was Shane Hernandez. Oh, I should put myself.
I was gonna say that was really weird.
Well, I put myself on the bottom because I've seen so that's how Viva Fry does it when he does interviews like that. He puts himself on the bottom so the guy he's interviewing is on top.
Viva Fry.
Great channel. Lots of amazing guests, lots of amazing commentaries. Channel worth watching. But anyway, all right, everybody. So there you go. That was Shane Hernandez.
That was really, really great. And I think that was the first time I've actually listened to his spiel, and I colored me impressed. I know Vance Patrick and I will be stomping for him on the floor on Saturday for sure. Yeah, and I'm stopping for Tammy Carlone too. So Tammy Carlone, State Board of Ed. Not that we have to worry about it, but it's still like that weird. It's a weird convention. We don't know what's going to happen. Yeah.
So all right. So a couple of other. And by the way, for everyone else in the chat, has questions we didn't get to. I'm sorry, folks. We only had so much time. Someone asked about his position on abortion. We've gone over that many times before.
Pretty sure, and I looked that person up. Pretty sure it was not the right side. It was for the wrong reasons.
Whatever. Doesn't mean the question shouldn't be answered, but I think it's been asked and answered a whole lot. And I think we talked about it on Sunday's show too. Anyway, all right. So let's talk a little bit about the convention. We've been streaming for only a little over half hour, so we've got some more time. I mentioned before, there's not going to be a challenge to Christina Caramo or Matt DePerno. There never was going to be. That's not going to happen. Ralph Reband for Lieutenant Governor. Maybe did we cover this before Shane came on? I think we did. I think there's going to be no problem with Shane winning the nomination on the floor, on the first voice vote. I think it's going to be an easy one, frankly. There are some people who still have some concerns about him, and they're free to have them. I don't think they're very well founded, and I don't think people are going to think that it's credible for somebody to attack the governor and then want to run with the governor at the same time. Because Tudor Dixon picked Shane Hernandez. And what you're saying is, I distrust her judgment. I'm better. I am better than Shane is. And, it comes across as egotistical and self-serving. I don't think it's going to work. What do you think?
It's really funny because I was talking to somebody, and I didn't watch Sunday's show. I was up north. They're going up north. And I was talking to someone and I go, I think a lot of people are just mad because they're mad about Tudor Dixon's pick. And the person was like, Adam had that same argument. I go, yeah, see, it's true. I think a lot of these people are just mad about Tudor and they want to have some sort of control when they're spiraling out in their mental, in their mind. And that's the control they think is to cause chaos. And it's not the right answer.
Well, and I think they're mad she won and they just want to take something out of her.
Exactly.
Yeah. And, and I mentioned this on Sunday's show. I'll say it again. you folks have to remember, the runner-up wasn't Garrett Soldano or Ryan Kelly or Ralph Reband. It was Kevin Rinke, who was by any stretch less conservative than Tudor was. He was the one that was talking about a universal gun registration and saying it's okay to kill a baby if the father raped the mother.
Exactly.
So if you're mad that DeVos has put their thumb on the scale, what was the alternative going to be? It wasn't going to be Ryan Kelly or Ralph Reband. It was probably going to be Kevin Rinke. So, I get being unsatisfied with the nominee. I certainly was not satisfied with the nominee for president that we had in 2008 and 2012. But this is different. Jane Locke says, Adam, a lot of people believe that Shane was selected by establishment and forced on Tudor. Well, Jane, we just went over this. The establishment didn't like Shane because he was one that would say no on a bunch of things. He was one that would say no on A to F. He was someone that was totally hardcore opposed to the gas tax, like that. Most of them were ready to compromise with the governor on.
He kept them there until 3 a.m. They don't like that.
Yeah. I should find that letter from John Riley about this too. I've got it here someplace. Because it really goes to just, how bitterly opposed, the establishment was determined to get this thing through, and they did. They twisted arms and they bargained and negotiated and threatened.
I would love to know, and this is, I guess I'm just getting so frustrated with some people. Who do people think is the establishment? Because I think they think like even the Maddox are the establishment at this point, or, MIGOP. And so everybody's so misguided that I don't even think they know who the establishment really is.
Yeah, I agree. Let me find this letter from John Riley, who, for all we know, they're going to call him the establishment next. Actually, there's a prediction for Nostra D'Angeli.
Exactly.
We're going to have a convention on Saturday. Here's what's going to happen, folks. Matt DePerno is going to endorse Shane Hernandez.
Oh,
Christina
yeah.
Caramo is going to endorse Shane Hernandez. And these same people are going to start saying they're the establishment. They got bought. They sold out. That's coming next from these same people. Mark my words, they're going to start attacking DePerno and Caramo. Prediction.
Right. Wow, I have to watch this Sunday episode because it sounds like there's a lot going on.
No, it was compared to the one the Sunday before that. In fact, I want to play a clip of that because I want to talk also about the other thing that's going to come up at this convention, and that's the credentials committee. But we'll get to that in a moment because we had quite a chat about that with John Smith a couple of weeks ago.
Oh,
anyway,
right, yeah.
So we'll get to that. But here's the letter that John Riley wrote, and again, one of like the most conservative people in the, top of the top most conservative lawmakers in the state house. Someone who has not gotten legislation through because he doesn't make deals with the party bosses. He says, fellow Republicans, for nearly 6 years, I've been working within the Republican Party to stand up for liberty and downsizing our state government, which is out of control. Meanwhile, the Republican-led legislature is often trying to increase the size of government. It has been maddening. My allies in Lansing sometimes were surprisingly small, but there is a core, meaning few, but there is a core group that consistently helped me. Shane Hernandez, who is the choice of Tudor Dixon for lieutenant governor, has consistently helped me and others fight the state to stop the state from making new, unnecessary, often tyrannical laws. I'll try to reveal the kind of person Shane is, realizing it's hard to determine who people are in politics. Ain't that the truth? My personal experiences with Shane follow. Example number one. In 2018, the DeVos's number one objective was to pass a bill requiring schools be graded based on standardized test scores. A terrible idea, putting even more emphasis on standardized tests instead of addressing the real problem in government schools. House leadership was bent on passing this bill, while 14 Republicans knew it was bad policy, whipping no, including Shane. A marathon session ensued that started at 10 a.m. and ended at 3 a.m. the following morning. Shane Hernandez, myself, and a few others tried to keep those 14 reps to a no position, while leadership used intimidation tactics, promises, wearing us down to get representatives to a yes vote on a terrible bill. By 2 a.m. in the morning, leadership convinced enough of our group of 14, I believe 9, to flip their vote to a yes. A special interest group working with Republicans won out, passing terrible, controlling legislation. Even though Shane was threatened, he could have lost his newly appointed position to appropriations chair. He did not change his vote. One of the most memorable days for me, which revealed the corruption in Lansing and the character of my fellow Republicans. Shane stood out. He had the most to lose, but he did not sell out for personal gain. Example 2. Special interest groups worked with House leadership to pass a bill that would allow Oakland County to join with parts of Macomb, Wayne, and Washtenaw to put a huge tax increase on our property tax for mass transit to the tune of billions, people. After their first attempt failed, partly by the efforts of a few grassroots groups that worked tirelessly and spent thousands, the Republican leadership quickly pivoted to a new bill that allowed excluding Macomb County with a reduced tax level. They then attempted to jam it through, catching reps off guard, making them think this allowed choices. Even Americans for Prosperity removed their opposition. But behind closed doors, Shane pushed back against this terrible legislation, calling it out to the leadership team, and revealing the true boondoggle the mass transit bill was. Without Shane on board as the appropriations chair, and with grassroots pressure from back home, the speaker conceded, and we defeated a tax increase in Oakland County with the leadership of Shane Hernandez.
That's amazing. And we're facing that right now. We're facing that right now in Oakland County. We're facing a tax hike and no opt-out by the county commission. So thanks, Shane, for lessening that.
Yeah, Shane Hernandez and John Riley led that fight.
That's
and people
amazing.
in Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb County, Wayne, Oakland, and Washtenaw County can thank them, even though Shane didn't even represent that district, for standing up for them. Example 3. The governor was very clear she wanted a 45-cent gas tax to fix the roads. Whitmer surely knew she might have to compromise, but she knew the public would be behind her. Shane, as the appropriations chair, started off the negotiation process with a hell no approach, not his words, to a gas tax increase. In his newly appointed position, he did not give an inch for additional gas taxes. He did go through the budget and found the funds to put towards roads, I believe $800 million, without raising any revenue, but instead making cuts to many of the departments. We avoided a gas tax increase because of the leadership of Shane Hernandez. Example 4, COVID outbreak. The government responded in some embarrassing ways. The governor overreached and the Republican House leadership faltered. Governor Whitmer used her political savvy to use laws to her advantage in an attempt to restrict liberty and the good sense of Michiganers. The governor used the 1945 law unjustly. It was Shane Hernandez who early on challenged her on the use of this law by presenting a resolution that eventually ended in a court deciding the governor could not use the 1945 law as she intended. This is leadership. I couldn't put it better, folks. I mean, on the most important issues we fought on these past few years, Shane was there with us. And
That's
it
amazing.
just boggles my mind that anybody would claim that he is not to their satisfaction a real conservative. I mean, standing up to not just, the same people that we claim we want to do something about, the DeVosses, the Republican leadership, the Lansing establishment. Shane was there saying no to them and managed to succeed the entire time. It's hard to do.
I like John Hicks. He goes, Shane, my kids are running around. He goes, Shane is not an attorney. I love that.
Yeah. All right. What else did I want to cover tonight? I should gotta look at Rumble again. Sorry. Rumble does not integrate chats the way that Facebook and YouTube do, so I want to make sure I haven't missed anything. Pieman 5000 on Rumble says Dixon and Hernandez ticket is easily the most 2A ticket the MIGOP has put forth. This is the most conservative ticket the MIGOP has put forth in living memory, period. I mean, Tudor Dixon, Shane Hernandez, Christina Caramo, and Matt DePerno.
This is a dream ticket for conservatives, and if we don't rally behind it, it's our own fault.
If we don't rally behind it, the message the leadership's going to get is, what's the point of ever trying to be conservative? Because all they will do is hate us anyway, make us lose.
The message is the establishment wins all times when they put up a Democrat for a conservative.
Yeah. On Rumble, GDS Loot says, are there any surprises Saturday? Reban asked us to reach out to delegates today asking to vote no on both voice votes in order to have nominations from the floor. Won't work. They're welcome to try. They're not going to have the numbers. I'm telling you that, folks.
They're not. Don't
worry about it. 4 days ago, when it was rumored Soldano might run for LG, that was a serious possibility. It's not anymore. It's a done deal. Only question is how much noise will they make and was causing disruptions. But it's not going to happen. But we should talk about the credentials committee because this is something that could happen. So if you guys have not heard, there was a bit of a kerfuffle in 2 counties in Michigan, Hillsdale and Macomb, where there were 2 competing slates for state delegates.
In all fairness, though, in Macomb, they were warned which one to go to.
Yeah,
which one to go to.
They were apparently told in Hillsdale as well. So for those of you who haven't seen, let me pull it up. I'm going to show you a bit of a clip from, first off, from our weekly live stream. Was it 11 days ago? I believe it was. We had a friend of the show, John Smith, on, and I had a bit of a disagreement with him about what was going on. So let's go to the backstory here. So in Hillsdale County, we have a state representative, Andrew Fink, who is in his first term. The Hillsdale County GOP, I think their executive committee was not too happy with him as a state rep. Although, as it happens, on the Rescue Michigan scorecard, he was one of the, I think, only 10 people that scored a positive score. So more conservative than most state reps, but they, I guess, recruited someone to run against him in the primary. And a whole lot of the Hillsdale GOP establishment was very angry about that. So we had John Smith on a week and a half ago talking about that, talking about how Mike Shirkey hates them, talking about how Tim Walberg hates them, talking about Andrew Fink hates them because they keep challenging all of them. And then a very bad thing happened. They recruited, I think, something like 60 precinct delegates. The John Smith's party, we'll call them the conservative party, the conservative side, the conservative wing of the party. And apparently something like 60 of their precinct delegates got disqualified by the clerk, by the county clerk, who apparently is also on the, let's say, the establishment side, because the notary did not date their precinct affidavit forms, the precinct delegate affidavit forms, the form you file when you run for precinct delegate. They didn't date the forms. The clerk didn't want them to be precinct delegates anyway, so they used that excuse. Which, by the way, folks, if you watched our video about how to become a precinct delegate, you will notice me saying, don't trust somebody else to file your paperwork. Do it yourself. That's why, because mistakes happen, and when there's one point of failure for everybody, bad things happen. Now, that is certainly arguably a bad thing that happened to them. However, as I said 2 weeks ago, two wrongs do not make a right. And so here, let me pull up the clip here. Hold on, I gotta reshare my screen. This is what apparently happened 2 weeks ago. Let me make sure I'm at the right point in the video. Let's see here. Let's see here. Let me go to this moment in the clip first. I'm finding the right spot. All right, let's see if this is it.
Can't do by bylaws or statutes or laws or whatever. You know what? We want to make a change, and this is how we're going to do it. And it's the best we could do. So going into the convention, we disavowed 80-something people. I know, according to we tried looking up some state law in regards to how delegates are even seated. I can't find nothing in state law that shows me where delegates are seated, when they're seated. All I can find is convention rules.
All right. Well, as it turns out,
literally mouthed the same thing both times. Disavowed. I was like, disavowed? Like, I said at the same time there.
Yeah. So it turns out there is a state law, and this is it here. Delegates to county convention, election and notice. Delegates to the fall county convention shall be elected by townships and in cities by precincts, and the county clerk shall notify by mail each person elected as such delegate. So that's what happened. And then cut to, let's see, I think it's here. Let's see if I got the right spot. Let's hear what happens next.
Attend the convention, and we gave them notice of trespass. That's what it is. So
look, I'm
like aware, Adam. You don't have to stutter.
I'm not an attorney. That sounds problematic.
Yeah,
the whole point
it's very problematic, right, Adam? I'm aware of it.
Well, the whole point of having a public election for precinct delegates is that you're running to have standing.
Yeah, show me the law where they seat it.
No, just
look, man.
Hey, I know exactly.
What I think is Darren Wisely is one of the brightest legal minds of our era, and this will go down as the seminal moment in which our freedom was restored.
All right. Well, here's what actually happened. August 19th, 2022, Michigan Republican Party, pursuant to Rule 1, 3, and 5A of the August 2022 election convention rules, all duly elected precinct delegates elected at the August 2nd, 2022 election will receive a call to convention from their local county party and be eligible to vote on delegates and alternates to the state convention on August 27th. The Hillsdale County Party leadership broke those rules by barring those duly elected precinct delegates from attending the Hillsdale County Convention. After being barred from entering the convention, 61 duly elected precinct delegates met outside of the convention, elected a permanent chair, Brent Leninger, a permanent secretary, and followed the proper procedures for conducting a convention. Those minutes were submitted to the Michigan GOP along with a list of 13 delegates and alternates, all 26 of whom are currently elected precinct delegates in Hillsdale County. The Hillsdale County GOP, chaired by Darren Wisely, also submitted a list of delegates and alternates. Of 13 delegates, just 5 were precinct delegates, and of the 13 alternates, just 4 were precinct delegates. This is also a violation of the 10% hardworking Republican rule. This is a rule that says that precinct delegates always have preference over non-delegates to go to county convention, unless the county convention allows up to 10% of those slots to be filled by non-delegates. Hillsdale County Republican officials were informed and they acknowledged that preventing duly seated delegates from being seated would invalidate their convention. In the Hillsdale GOP response, a number of grievances were presented in which the Michigan Republican Party is willing to help resolve. However, none of those grievances permitted the clear violation of the rules that occurred. Given that a clear supermajority of precinct delegates attended the alternate convention and the procedures for a proper convention were followed, the Credentials Committee is seating the delegates and alternates submitted by Convention Chair Brent Leninger. The list submitted by Chairman Darren Wisely will not be seated in the elevated precinct delegates at his convention are invalidated. So that's what happened in Hillsdale. And maybe something different will happen at state convention, but I don't see how, folks. It's like the law says if you're a precinct delegate elected in a public election, you have standing to vote at your county convention. They can't just tell you can't. So.
Okay, so what happened? The notary didn't fill out the dates on all of them?
So, yeah, okay. So here's the notary document. I've got one right here.
I'm a notary. You know how many delegate forms I notarized? At least.
Okay, well, I'll just I'm sure you do, but for the sake of our audience, here we go. So you got the part where I signed and dated it, and there it is. And there's my date, and then on page 2 we have the notary, there's the stamp, the signature, and there's the date. They did not complete that dating there when they turned it in. So John made the point that, well, they turned in these precinct delegate affidavits long before the filing deadline, but they didn't make a complaint about them until after the deadline. But I mean, what do you expect them to do? They probably threw them all in a drawer and didn't look at them until the filing deadline went by.
See, that was wrong on their part, though.
Well,
it depends on when they turned them in. Like if literally they like coveted them until the day before and turned them all in, yeah, that's on their group.
I mean, it could be. I mean, you could call it a reversible error. And something that could have been remedied, especially if those precincts all had vacancies. Sure. I mean, there's potential legal action you could take, something like that. But as I said a week and a half ago, the problem is 2 wrongs don't make a right. And just because you got ripped off by the notary or the clerk or anybody else doesn't entitle you to say, okay, I'm going to disqualify all of your delegates because we don't agree with your views. And John said as much on our show. He's like, these are all rhinos. Well, maybe they are, but that does not disqualify them from being precinct delegates. So that's what's happened in Hillsdale. And what's happened in okay, real quick, let me take some chats. Phyllis Exegol says, how can a notary not notarize properly? Mistakes happen all the time. All the time.
Right. They could really prosecute the notary right now and get the notary taken away, but at this point,
they could do that. There's probably standing to sue, something like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, all those remedies does not include, giving you standing. I mean, if anything, I mean, the most extreme remedy a court might possibly award is allowing those delegates to be seated, but they're not going to be able to invalidate the delegates at the convention that were told they can't be delegates just because their ideology is bad. They can't do that. So yeah, the MIGOP just said these are who the delegates we picked as the people at the alternate convention because number one, they had a quorum. I mean, if your convention doesn't have a quorum, then you don't have a convention. They said the supermajority of delegates were at the other convention in the parking lot, as it were. So that's just the way it goes, folks. I'm sorry to tell you. And look, in politics, people play dirty all the time. Welcome to the world. But it doesn't mean you get to break the rules, because the system's not in your favor. It's in the enemy's favor. So
Exactly. You fix the system.
yeah, and you learn for next time. And for those of you who this is your
Exactly.
first convention and your first county convention, I got news for you folks. They try to cheat all the time.
Oh my
Every
gosh.
convention you go to is a learning experience. Every single one.
My first convention, I was so bored. I was so disenfranchised. I didn't know what to do. I didn't even re-up my precinct delegate. And then I got in this rigmarole, got on the 11th, and then got stuck in this cycle and realized how important precinct delegates really are. But because I felt disenfranchised, I was just like, what's the point? So get involved. It's really important.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I was there. I was
In every convention, I've learned a lot. But that's the way that goes. Stephen Ghostly says, I'm nervous about state. Well, we'll talk about it a little bit more. I'm not as nervous as you are, because I'm not nervous.
Okay, so Zoe Lee, she or he, I don't know, can't guess anymore, had a question. So delegates get voted on at county convention who goes to states, and there's two slates. There's the slate that gets to go and voting slate, and then alternates who, delegates don't make it to state, alternates get called in to vote. So that's how it is. You're a precinct delegate, you get voted on to go to states, and then there's two different voting classes. There's the delegates, and then there's the alternate delegates. And then the last question she said was, I think so.
I think what she means is the one, the one convention versus the other. The answer is the state parties decided. They're designating the other. That was what that letter said.
Oh yeah. No, she asked the question earlier up though about it.
Oh, okay.
And I she goes, I know nothing about being a delegate, so it might be a silly question, but if I understand it now, not all delegates go to convention, and of the ones that do, not all are allowed to vote. So that's what I was saying. There's alternates that get to vote if the regular delegates don't fill the
the alternates are all ranked.
Yeah.
And the way it's going to work is there's going to be a vote, and however many delegates don't vote, they will give that many alternates in order standing to vote. That's what the alternates are. Yeah. And if you're a high ranking alternate, chances are you will get to vote, because always people fail to show up to convention. Happens all the time.
Oh yeah. And then how will they decide who votes if two sets of delegates show up from the same county? So there's standing that the state committee elects whose slate they choose, and that's in Hillsdale. And it's kind of funny. So I mean, how they did it, it is what it is. Yeah. But they were warned. Each county was warned to not do what they did. Yeah.
And should we talk about Macomb County now? I think we should talk about Macomb County.
I mean, I know a decent amount about it, so.
Well, I know a fair amount. About it. I've been following this for some time. I guess we should start from the beginning, shouldn't we? And this is going to piss some people off, I'm sure, because I'm sure some people are on one side.
A lot of people off.
Well, you know what? I mean, this is my habit, people. It would surely have been more profitable for me to not interject myself in many grassroots fights over the last year and a half or so, but that's just kind of my way. So I don't mind. I'm not doing this for the clicks or the lulz or the donations or the whatever. I'm just here to tell you how it is. So Mark Fortin was maybe still is the chair of the Macomb County GOP. We'll talk about that in a second. But going back just a little bit, Mark Fortin is clearly a very proud patriot, and that's all well and good. But sometimes you got to temper yourself, and sometimes you got to, not let your emotions get the better of you. And Mark Fortin kind of did a few things that really ticked off a lot of people in Macomb County. For one thing, he was very, very adamant that there was a candidate for state representative named Melissa Carone, who ran for state rep in Macomb County, and he demanded that everybody.
Going way back. This is going back to the start.
Well, you got to start from the beginning. That's where this kind of started. For those who don't know who Melissa Carone is, she was a fairly controversial figure in the 2020 election. You'll recall she was one of the, and as was I think the 50 some people that testified before the state Senate about irregularities in the 2020 election. And I have to say, and this has been my opinion since the moment it happened, I thought of all of the people that testified at that hearing, and there was like 50 of us, Melissa Caron's testimony was the only testimony I thought was just not the least bit credible. It was a amazing story of meeting up with the Dominion executives at a secret bunker where they were plotting their whole plan to rig the election and the machines and everything. And in the heat of the litigation over the election, she kind of became the star witness because they didn't really vet anybody for Rudy Giuliani, and she ended up being parodied on Saturday Night Live. Turns out she's got a background as a stripper, as a stalker, got convicted of some computer crime, sending some naked photos to some ex-boyfriend or her girlfriend or something or other. Ended up getting disqualified from the ballot altogether. I think Fortin somehow blamed the party for this, although it had nothing to do with that. It was the Secretary of State, but
she's not a voting delegate. This is talking about the different slate, the alternative slate.
So there was the Melissa Caron thing, and Mark Fortin, if you go to his Facebook page, he's made lots and lots of these videos alleging state party corruption and this and that. And meanwhile, at the same time, he's saying the state party is improperly recruiting candidates. We need to support Melissa Caron. It's like,
well, the whole everybody. He was endorsing all these different candidates, and he was a party chair. He's the party chair of McCall.
He was doing the very thing he was accusing them of doing. He was saying, you have to support my candidates. You can't support your own candidates. And it's like, well, actually, maybe neither of you should, and maybe this comes back to that old lesson: two wrongs don't make a right. And even if the state party is recruiting candidates, it doesn't give you license to put your thumb on the scale for yours. But he was doing the same kind of thing. He was also very vociferously promoting Matt DePerno and calling anyone that didn't support Matt DePerno a rhino until Matt DePerno wouldn't buy his flight to Mar-a-Lago, and then he revoked his endorsement. So,
I love the chronology of this. It's just so funny hearing it all in order.
Yeah. So, and so at this point, he is now waging full-scale war on the GOP establishment. And again, folks,
but
look,
just the GOP, not even the establishment, because these people aren't establishment.
Yeah, if you're any individual or an activist or a grassroots leader, you don't have to have any loyalty to anybody in the party. That's not your job. But if you're like a county chair, that does kind of come with the territory.
Right.
If you're a state or a county party official or any party official, you shouldn't be publicly airing dirty laundry that's going to serve no harm except to damage the entire party altogether. Adam says
it about me as executive director, but I still try to be a
well,
little bit.
The exception that proves the rule. But again, that's why I discourage people from getting involved in party leadership, is you don't want to lose that independence. But anyway, Mark Fortin had no such conscience restrictions on that. So he was throwing all these bombs and everything. So, and of course, he's also going after everybody within the party. Because that was a big thing too, was if you don't support these hardcore grassroots people, you're a rhino. We gotta excommunicate you from the county party. So he was alienating a lot of people in Macomb County. So in April, by the way, Tony Parton says, I heard she wasn't a stripper, but she did work at Hooters. Keep digging, Tony. No, she was working somewhere else altogether.
There are pictures. I've seen them.
Yeah. Anyway, so the April convention rolls around. Now, this is a convention for one purpose: to elect delegates to the state convention, where they will in turn choose who they want for Attorney General and SOS. Google it, Stephen. So Eric Castiglia is this Macomb County activist. He's got his own PAC, and the delegates there, although it was not the official purpose of the convention, held a vote to replace the entire executive committee of Macomb County. And they had the votes.
They had the votes.
They had the votes. So now there was a question which was resolved by a lawsuit, or maybe not entirely resolved, but we'll get to the lawsuit in a minute. But they had a convention. They had the votes to replace the entire county party. Now, again, going back to the basic issue of the GOP. If the majority of delegates aren't with you, then why should you even be the chair? Even if you could be. At that point, when you have, I mean, in other countries, they have this thing called a vote of no confidence. If the majority of people don't support you, are you helping the party anymore by refusing to vacate your seat if the majority of people don't still want you there? But, you know, Mark Fortin knows everything. He's smart. All of his candidates are great. Everyone else's candidates are evil. So he insists he is still the county chair and asserts himself as such. I think it was actually Eric Castiglia that sued him, who was the chairman at the convention that voted to replace him. They get a judge, a Democrat judge. The Democrat judge says, sorry, there's nothing in your bylaws that says you can replace the chair, which might actually be correct, legally speaking.
I don't think it is. He's fighting it tooth and nail.
Yeah, it's debatable. I heard they've appealed it even, which, I mean, all this to no good end anyway. To no good end.
No, when you fight it within your party.
They'll have a convention in December to elect a new executive committee when that time comes.
Right.
And you could argue maybe, well, but the precinct delegates that were just elected in August are going to vote differently than the ones that were elected 2 years ago. But they clearly just didn't, because Eric Castiglia's convention had the most delegates there too.
Right.
So the state party said once again, they're recognizing the majority of precinct delegates going to state convention for them too. So there's going to be apparently a credentials challenge at the state convention coming up on Saturday, demanding that they seat Mark Fortin and Darren Wisely's delegates rather than the delegates from the other conventions. Stephen Ghosty, Melissa Carone. Look her up. Colorful character. She's now apparently Donna Brandenburg's running mate on the U.S. Taxpayers Party, which I mean, and she got disqualified from the ballot once. Why not try again? I mean, it's just there's so much of this stuff, people. Drama queenery is the term for it.
It really is. And I remember one bad Trump pick being Jack Eubanks, and I'll never forget that. And that was another Melissa Carone follower, Mark Fortin disciple. And I was so mad about the platform she was getting, because she was just a drama queen. And she's young, and she was going out there fighting voter fraud, but like doing it in the wrong way. And I was really upset about it. And she lost, rightfully so. But it was just the craziness behind, well, if she loses, it's the establishment. No, she loses because she's the worst candidate.
Yeah. Oh, this is funny. Phoenix Exigal says, does Omar's do a Dominion machine background check? If you guys don't know, Omar's is the strip club in Lansing. Right across from the Lansing Center, too.
Right across from the Lansing Center. That's the weirdest thing.
Yeah. Cynthia Burley says, one thing left out of the chronology, the purpose of the convention was not to replace the executive board, therefore a coup. Arguably.
Well, we've done it before. We did it before in Oakland.
We did it in 1787. We had a constitutional convention that was just to make a few amendments. We ended up throwing out the entire document. No, there is I mean, it's an open question. The legal... It is an open legal question. But there's also the moral question. If you don't have the majority of delegates that support you, then why should you still be chair? And
but also, when the chair goes rogue, when they are not supposed to endorse people, and they're not supposed to do this, not supposed to do that. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. At any rate, you know, it's just a ticking time bomb. It'll all it can do, and this is the point, people. It has nothing to do with the state convention, which is about nominating Tudor Dixon, Shane Hernandez, Christina Caramo, and Matt DePerno. All they're going to do is make a stink, make a public scene,
chaos,
embarrass the party, damage the ticket. That's all that's going to happen. That's all that will come of this. And for what? So, but anyway, all that said, I know you guys are nervous about this. It's not going to work. Number one, they need a 2/3 majority to have a credentials committee challenge. Number two, 81 other counties probably don't really give a crap about any of this.
And they don't.
Number three, the seated delegates in Hillsdale and Macomb are going to be the people that won. And number four, all these things take time. And delegates are going to, I mean, you're all going to find the conventions for the most part boring. And no one wants to spend their whole day.
Boring. Yeah. It's so boring.
Let's just take a few more hours to have a vote. People aren't going to want that. So my prediction, there'll be a few angry people here and there. Hopefully not a huge scene. But other than that, the convention's going to go fine.
You'll get to be around patriots. You get to speak freely. I would love to talk to you and meet you if you haven't met me yet. I'm around.
Yeah.
Adam's around. It'll be good times.
We'll be there.
We'll
be there. Yeah, we'll be there. So if nothing else, we can hang out, and there's always lots of there's downtime too. There's lots of downtime. I always tell people bring a book. I think I spent most of the time at the last day convention at the bar because we were waiting hours and hours and hours and hours for these votes to come in.
I actually found an amazing restaurant last time.
What's that?
It was Tupelo in Grand Rapids. It was up the road, like this Tupelo song from Van Morrison.
Oh, that's right, but it was in Grand Rapids. This one's in Lansing. Lansing's
this one's in Lansing. I was gonna say Lansing's gonna be a lot more boring. Yeah.
It's not close to the Lansing Center, but if you're driving, go to Meat. It's a very nice barbecue place.
I'm hitting a couple wineries. There's a Williamson winery right outside the city.
Yeah. All right, guys. I think that's all I've got for tonight. We've gone a long time. We had a great guest.
It was good to come back from vacation to this. I really appreciate the call, Adam.
Oh yeah, we should talk about how was your vacation? Because I went up to the UP right before you did. What was your thoughts on it?
Well, they love Trump still, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It was really nice. It was good to just get away from the I didn't want service, but I still had a lot of self-service, which kind of pissed me off.
Yeah.
Because I'm one of those people that need to disconnect completely. But it was really nice. We went to Tequamanon. The boys had a great time. We went survival camping. That was really cool. And I love seeing Michigan. It's so gorgeous. I've never been up there.
Yeah, I mean, my thought about the UP as I went, and this is not my first UP trip, is it's really pretty. It's also really samey from one place to the next. And
wait, what do you say? Really what?
Samey. Like as you drive from St. Ignace towards Marquette, it's like the same thing. Over and over and over again. It's like you see all these places that call themselves resorts. It's like a motel with a pool. And it's like the same thing. It's like we have pasties and smoked fish and fudge. And what a combination those three things are, people. Really. I mean, ugh.
Well, I think about the people and I think about how interesting they must be.
Yeah.
To live up there and what I could do and not be around people. It's like the weirdest, most amazing thing in the world. Like I could do this. And then I'm like, but could I really do this?
Yeah.
I have to have mad respect for those people.
I ended up in Ontonagon where we did some hiking around the Porkies, which they call a mountain range, which is, it's a bunch of little hills, but and there were some cool little spots in Ontonagon too. But I just got done hiking, and as I'm driving back out of the park, my car is almost out of gas. I'm starting to get nervous. I'm not going to make it back to my hotel without getting gas. So and I'm also thinking my dogs need water. I want to get a drink. And also I got to get a souvenir. It's my last day in the UP. And so I get to a place and it says, we have gas and food and drinks and souvenirs. So I stop at this little hotel in the middle of nowhere in Ontonagon. And as I pull in, there's this big decked out RV with all these Republican signs for Ed McBroom and Jack Bergman and Greg Market, and I'm like, what is this? So I go to the bar and get a drink. I see a guy walk past me, and I recognize him. He's this guy I knew from Lansing. He actually ran for state house, and it was after John Kevela killed himself. He was running from the special election for that seat. A guy named Rich Rossway. He didn't make it, but we helped him out a little bit on his campaign. I ended up going up north around that same time anyway, because the state house had us knocking on doors in that area. So I went up to him and I'm like, "Hey, Rich, what are you doing here?" He's like, "I remember you." And I was like, "Yeah, we met at Tom Casperson's house, and you were running for the Kevela seat." He's like, "Oh yeah, that's right." So we caught up and I told him I wasn't on. He's like, "Yeah, this is our Reagan Day dinner in Ontonagon County GOP. Jack Bergman's going to be here in a few minutes. You want to see him?" And I'm like, "Oh, all right, sure." So Jack Bergman, drives up and I meet him and say hello. An old friend of mine actually works for him. So we chatted for a few minutes, and then they invite me to go in. They're like, "Hey, we have a Reagan Day dinner. We got some extra tickets. You want to come join us for dinner?" I'm like,
"How many people were at the Reagan Day?" I'm just curious.
When I was there was like 20. Wow. But this is Ontonagon. This is not a huge town.
I don't even know where Ontonagon is.
It's the very west, almost the very western tip of the UP. Only Gogebic is far. They have weird names for places out there. I don't know. Is it Finnish or Ojibwe where those names come from? I have no idea. Let us know in the chat if you have any idea where these weird names come from.
Ontonagon. That's cool though.
It sounds to me more likely finished than Ojibwa, but I don't know. I actually have no idea. Anyway, it's way out there. So they're like, hey, you want to come join us for our Reagan Day? And I'm like, I didn't actually say this, but I'm thinking,
It was Melanie.
no, man, I came up here to get away from Republicans. I don't want to do that. So I went back to my hotel. Renee says it's Ojibwe. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah,
anyway,
and the gas prices were so crazy.
Randy says finish. So who knows? Nobody really knows where these words come from. So
it was great. It was a good time. Yeah, Zoe says finish too, and she was up there. Lots of blonde people from Finland.
Yeah. So,
it was good. It was fun. We missed each other though. Next time we'll have to go at the same time.
Yeah, no, I do like the UP. It's definitely something special. But it's also like I mean, a lot of things like as you're driving across, around Lake Superior, there's like hotel on the lake, hotel on the lake, hotel on the lake, hotel on the lake.
I didn't even see that. I mean, we made it to Tequamanon, which it was so desolate. I felt like it was more desolate than anything.
Yeah.
And then I went to Petoskey afterwards, and I'm like, oh, this is just, you can feel liberalism in the air.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That's the thing too. I mean, Marquette's turning into Ann Arbor. Traverse City's turning into Ann Arbor. Petoskey. I mean, it's liberals just gravitate towards cities, and they're like parasites that kill their host, and then they hatch out of it and they have to go somewhere else. Like they destroy a city like Detroit or Flint or what have you, and they run to the next city that's unspoiled and bring their values along with them. It's sad. Okay, Renee says my husband is Finnish and Ojibwe. He says it's Ojibwe. Okay.
So. Wow. So I will take that.
Chat, you are useless.
Oh my goodness, this was fun. Thank you so much, Adam. I'll see you.
All right, guys.
I'll see you tomorrow.
See you guys all, I hope, at convention. Even if you're not delegates, you should still. Well, actually, no, you shouldn't go to state if you're not a delegate because it's so boring.
It is so boring. Except for last time in Grand Rapids, it was a lot of fun. This time it's going to be fun because we're there. I'm there. I make everything a good time.
Fair enough.
So it'll be good to see everybody.
All right, yeah. Be there. No, you should come to support the candidates and support the ticket. And have a good pep rally for them because they need it. They need it.
And come Monday, call your local GOP and get knocking doors and get on the ground game and get at festivals and get at everywhere you can because we don't have the money to do the ads like the Dems do over and over again. And it's so funny. I just have to tell this one story. Every time we turn on Hulu, it's always the Whitmer commercial against Tudor Dixon. And so I've trained my kids to be like, we love Tudor Dixon. So now every time that commercial comes on, and I mean, that's how you indoctrinate your kids the other way. So
yeah, and folks, money is a big part of campaigns. We call that the air power. The other side of that coin is the ground game. And I'll tell you, no matter what happens, I don't anticipate Tudor Dixon being able to outraise Gretchen Whitmer. It will take ground game to win this race. And that's going to mean precinct leadership. And that's going to be probably the theme of just about every show that we do from here on out is winning your precinct, and knocking on doors and reaching voters and being effective and showing them how the media lies to them and showing them how Gretchen Whitmer lies to them and showing them how the Democrats lie to them and showing them how the ballot proposals lie to them. So we'll talk more about that soon. Oh, we didn't even mention our flyers. Get our flyers, folks. Shoot, they're linked in the email.
I didn't even know our flyers. Oh, emails. I should read them more.
I'll talk. Yeah, okay. I'll get our site fixed up. Maybe after convention, we'll see. And I've got more flyers in the works too about the 3 witches. So
that's awesome. So Patty P says, in Wayne County, we have more precinct delegates than Dems do, which is speaking volumes, people. I mean, we could really change Wayne County with that. That's awesome, Patty. You're amazing. I'll bring some leftovers to check out with you.
Good. All right, everybody. Thank you guys all for tuning in. Oh, before we go, I'm so sorry to all of our folks watching on Rumble. Let me just see if there's anything I need to address on Rumble. I don't think I see any chats that need to be addressed. Maybe next time we'll start doing we'll have like a super chat policy or something. So if like someone sends a donation with a chat, I'll promise them I'll read it.
I would love that. That would be. I've been telling you to do that for a while now. Now we're actually really cool. So
yeah. Tony Parton says John Tater for Wayne County Sheriff. Patty P says, Amber just read that one. All right, guys. Thanks as always for all you guys do for liberty. Until next time. And that next time will be Sunday at 9 p.m. Peace out.